Could Lost Lambs by Madeline Cash be the funniest book of 2026? It is for me. Hi, I'm Amanda, and this is Spineless Books, spoiler-free reviews for readers and listeners like me. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps the channel, and in exchange, you'll get a new spoiler-free review every single week. Madeline Cash's debut novel came out in January of 2026, and it was immediately recognized as an award winner. It won the Barnes & Noble Discover Prize, the Center for Fiction First Novel Prize for Longlist, and the Waterstone Debut Fiction Award of 2026. That's pretty impressive. So what is it about this novel that is catching everyone's attention and winning it awards? In my opinion, it's Cash's voice in her writing. It's quick-witted, sassy, and surprisingly poignant, a pretty rare combination if you ask me. Her book is funny, heartfelt, and intentionally weird in a way that feels authentic rather than gimmicky. If I had to compare this to anything at all that I've read before, I would say The Road to Tender Hearts by Annie Hartnett. It has in common that sort of spiraling, everything out of control, things are a mess feeling. The one difference would be that I feel like this one's a little bit darker and less feel-good. And also in The Road to Tender Hearts, PJ is really your main character, and all of the side characters have things about them that they are striving towards and they have trajectories. But this book is framed a little differently in that all 5 main characters have equal sort of weight in the story, and I think that's a really interesting approach. So imagine 5 PJs instead of just one with some side characters. Everybody's important in this one. The family at the center of Lost Lambs is really quite intriguing. Mom and Dad are having some marital trouble. Mom wants an open marriage. Dad's falling apart. And then you've got the 3 girls. Abigail, who's 17, is dating an older man, 22, named War Crimes Wes, so you can figure out what that's about. Louise, the middle child, is involved in an online relationship that definitely should not be happening. Harper, the youngest, is 12, and she's a prodigy and a genius, and she is very sure that her conspiracy theory about their town is right, and nothing's going to stop her. I might not need to tell you anything other than what the characters are about in order to entice you to read this story, but I will say that the voice with which it's written and the craziness that ensues make it even more worthwhile than just the basic character traits. The family members are not communicating with each other at all, which makes their struggles really isolated when they probably don't have to be. The narrative shifts between the perspectives of each of the characters, and it's not a round-robin rotation like you might think, it just sort of organically and flexibly happens. And that allows us to really get to know each character and their individual struggles in a way that feels like it makes sense rather than a forced character A, character B, character C, which sometimes works, and in this case, I'm really glad that's not what Madeline Cash did. As a result, all 5 family members feel fully individualized and have distinct personalities. I love the way the book embraced this family's weirdness, rather than trying to normalize it or explain it away. It's just how this family is, so deal with it. It fit the sense of humor of the book perfectly, which was dry and sometimes sarcastic and often very deadpan. The author had a trick she used in her writing almost ad nauseum, but for some reason it worked on me every single time. She would do something, for example, like say, Louise did not want to go to the party. "I don't want to go to the party," said Louise. And I don't know why, as silly as it was and as gimmicky of a trick as it was, it just got me, and I laughed out loud every time it happened. It was well timed too, and I think that's part of why it worked so well. The story was so far-fetched and absurd, yet it felt human and real and authentic, and I think that's really well-crafted writing in order to pull that off. Now, obviously the goal here is for the family to sort itself out. Each of the 3 girls has a challenge, the parents have a marital challenge, and how do we make this all resolve so the family can sort of resume a normal life as they have prior to the beginning of the book? Each person ultimately connects to the solution to that problem, and they connect it in ways that I basically never expected. Anything that I would have thought I could predict about this book, first of all, things changed too quickly for me to really get on my own trajectory, but also it just came at me in a way that was really wonderful, and I didn't have to think that hard about it. And I wouldn't have come up with it if you'd given me infinite time to do so. I don't think the plot of this story was its greatest strength, but the writing was so strong and comical that it carried the weak points of the plot anyway. I think the best experience I could use to compare this book, in addition to Road to Tender Hearts as a reading experience, is that this book felt to me like I was listening to a story about Bob's Burgers. And it's not just because there was a Louise in this story too, but there was something about the way the family interacted and how everybody was so distinct that it just was a little bit crazy. But I think if you like Bob's Burgers, this might be one you'd enjoy. Although this is definitely a little bit darker than Bob's Burgers. I could easily see Madeline Cash writing a series with these characters, and in fact, I would read a novel about every one of the 5 family members. I could see the way that the characters develop, that she could branch off and make each one its own story, and I would be here for it because they're just so unusual and really great characters, and she brings them out in very few pages with extreme success. This book was narrated by Christine Lakin, who I've heard before, and I think she's a really great narrator. What she did particularly well in this book was narrate with the right amount of deadpan at all possible moments. There were moments where she was sarcastic, and there were moments where she was just dry as could be, and it was exactly what the book called for. She did a little bit of characterization, not like a tremendous amount, but enough to help you understand whether you were listening to a younger character or an older character, a male or a female character, and it was perfect. I was at no point distracted by her narration. What I think her narration did especially well was bring out the fact that these were everyday circumstances for this family. The events in this book are weird and unusual and not things that I run into on a daily basis. But Christine Lakin helped sell what the writing was proposing, that these are everyday occurrences for this family and we should just kind of deal with it. And it works. I think if you like Bob's Burgers or The Road to Tender Hearts, this might be one you'd really enjoy picking up. It is a little bit dark, but it made me laugh out loud, and it was just silly and funny. Actually, it reminded me a little bit of Harold by Stephen Wright, which was just another laugh out loud funny book, but this one had a little bit more story to it than that one did, and definitely more characters. For me, this turned out to be a 4-star read, but it would definitely be a read I would be willing to pick up again and go through one more time for the joy of how funny and just dry this book was. I really loved Madeline Cash's sense of humor, and if she has another novel come out sometime soon, I will definitely be in line to buy it, or at least check it out from the library. But regardless, you might love what I hate or hate what I love, so make your own opinion. But thanks for listening to mine. If you've read this one, let me know in the comments, and I hope to see you next time.